Invest Africa, proudly brought to you by KPMG.
East Africa, I keep telling everybody who will listen, it is possibly the most exciting place to do business in the world today.
Opening an oil marketing company is quite easy, and now we've got 60 or 65 oil marketing companies in the country.
Of course, you need to do it in Kenya for many reasons. One, I think it's just the people. We are a very multilingual society.
Of the 10 fastest growing economies in the world, 7 are in Africa. 3 of those 7 are in East Africa.
No one that comes to Uganda and works here and wants to go back to where they come from. It doesn't matter where you come from.
The market is still open for investors.
It is one market that you enjoy working with and that you'll be able to get a return on your investment.
The East African economy is quickly becoming one of the fastest growing on the continent. On this special edition of Invest Africa, we travel from the skyscraper-dotted skyline of Nairobi to the burgeoning cosmopolitan look of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, and end our journey on the streets of Kampala, Uganda. In each country of this East African region, we sit down and chat to various industry movers and shakers to discuss both the benefits and the challenges of their respective economies, government policy, and international investment. This is Invest Africa. We touch down in the picturesque city of Nairobi, Kenya, and drop in for our first chat to understand the Kenyan economy.
Kenya is currently the chairman of the East African Community, and it's a privilege that we are going to hand over on the 20th of this month to President Kikwete of Tanzania. We have been chairman for a little over 1 year. During that period, we have launched a few products, including the Northern Corridor Transit. The East African Community Secretariat has done a lot of the heavy lifting, actually bringing us together and making sure that we hold meetings, making sure that we're actually ahead of the curve all the time. But we also have COMESA. Right now, the East African Community brings together a market of about 200 plus million people. COMESA brings together 450 million. It's a bigger market. It's a free trade area, right, where we can move goods and people. Goods almost quota and duty free. And the idea at the end of the day is to have an Africa-wide free trade area. And you better believe it, it's going to happen. Nairobi and Kenya are seen as the center of this region. And it's a natural hub because, again, we are surrounded by countries that are landlocked. We've opened up in terms of giving the tourists one visa for the region, right? So that's another first actually in Africa.
Opening up your borders and allowing the free flow of both trading and skills is all good and well, but what are the investment opportunities that are presenting themselves in the East Africa region at present? We next chatted to KPMG Nairobi about some of these opportunities.
Recent discoveries in oil and gas resources in Tanzania, here in Kenya, in Uganda, in South Sudan already being developed. So there's a lot of interest in that area. Also in the area of manufacturing, we've got a lot of people investing to feed the 150 million people, as I said, in the region. The area of energy, we've got an energy deficit in the region, so green energy. This week here in Kenya, we're actually launching a new project in geothermal energy, hydro energy, solar power development. There are a number of areas, and of course infrastructure. The region needs to be connected. Let's talk about mobile telephony. And how that has transformed the continent and this part of the world, and how that can also perhaps be applied in transforming other sectors. If you look at mobile telephony, here in Kenya, for example, we unbundled what was called then the state corporation, which was providing fixed telephony and was the owner of the only mobile phone company then. And actually as a firm we were involved in unbundling that, creating the initial regulatory framework, separating the postal from the fixed line, and then of course the divestment of the mobile telephony company. Now what mobile telephony made possible was for us to leapfrog the need to invest in all these cables that were needed to reach the population that was not being served by telephony. So mobile telephony then quickly went to parts of the country that we could have taken years to reach if we were investing in cables, digging up trenches and investing in cables. And as soon as then everybody got a handset in their hands, is then what do you do with it? You know, the need for communication. Then of course came mobile money. And mobile money then meant, because of the linkages in a lot of our population here, we've got what I would call centers of economic activity, and then our dependents are out in the countryside. And so every so often we needed to send money either by bus or by a relative who came over, or ourselves traveling back. And initially, this was the first service that we were able to use in mobile telephony, is that you could send money. Previously, you could actually send money to the shopkeeper, and then the shopkeeper gives it to your mom or your dad or your grandmother or grandfather. So that transaction then is what migrated into then a commercial transaction.
With some negative sentiment out there regarding the threat of terrorism and security in general, certain umbrella organizations have been formed to help facilitate both business communication and advocacy for the private sector.
Kenya Private Sector Alliance is the umbrella body of the private sector in Kenya, and it comprises both of the associations, all the different associations of the different sectors, big and small, Association of Manufacturers, Federation of Kenya Employers, Kenya National Chamber of Commerce, to the very small ones of micro and small enterprises. But also we have members who are direct corporate members, just like it's very similar to what we have like in the UK, the Confederation of Business Industries, what we have in Singapore, the Singapore Business Federation, and many other countries that have umbrella bodies. And our work is really advocacy for the private sector. Right now, the private sector is really engaging in a lot of these private sector, government projects that are in infrastructure. For example, the government is trying to build about 10,000 kilometers of road, and has invited the private sector to take those opportunities by giving different benefits on how they can really get financing, affordable financing, to be able to do that. And already last year they commissioned about 2,000 kilometers, and so each year they commission a few thousand until we're able to do 10,000 that the country needs. Corruption is there, but I always say in Kenya there's more, the perception is bigger than the reality of perception and of corruption, and because we talk about it, and which is a good thing, because then that has seen it reduce over time because people really talk about it. But it's still there, mostly not for the big private sector, but mostly for the very small. I always say that the business community and the people themselves began the integration faster than the governments came in. By the time the governments came in, they came in to put the policies and regulations, but people had already started trading, people had already started moving within the region. So that's what really has made it easier. Every time I talk to investors out there, they have all these hesitations. When they come here, they're like, you never told about this. You know, we can't believe this place is this beautiful or has this kind of resources or these opportunities, as much as we say there. But it's because of the image that is portrayed of Africa, of Kenya out there. And so I think we need to do a better job of PR and talk more about the things that we have than what we don't have, because I think we have more than what we don't have.
On that positive note, it was time to head off to Tanzania and the eclectic mix of old world and new world architecture that is Dar es Salaam. we chatted to Juliet Karuki, the Executive Director of the Tanzania Investment Center, about the sectors in the country that are attracting the most investment currently and government legislation around these sectors.
We are registering significant investments in manufacturing. For us, that's the big one, and that's where we seem to see a lot of activity. But there are other sectors as well that government is prioritizing and promoting as part of an effort to enable Tanzania to achieve middle income status by 2025. Government has placed significant effort in rolling out infrastructure, not only in the urban areas but also throughout the country. So the country is now interconnected, which is a beautiful thing. So we have a road carpet that extends over 3,000 kilometers. We've put into place legislation that enables private investment in infrastructure and roads, and that's very, very important. The harbour there's significant focus currently on the harbour. There's an appreciation on the government side that there may be a need to invest, in the berths that are in the existing harbour, but also to look at other sites that can serve as alternative harbours to complement the work of the Dar es Salaam one. It's always important for foreign investors to take their cue from the domestic markets and domestic investors in particular. And it's very encouraging to report that over the last 10 years, the greatest generators of what we call capital for investment have been in Tanzania domestic investors.
It's not all peaches and cream, though, when it comes to investing in Africa, and for all the positive stories, each country does come with its own set of challenges. Stefan Gay, Managing Director of Total Tanzania, now explains.
Tanzania is a beautiful country with lots of assets, lots of potential, but doing business it's still sometimes complicated. And it's quite easy to launch a company here, to create a company in every sector. But you need to look at the right partners, consuls, to make sure that you understand how many state agencies you will have to deal with to get the right certificate, the right license, all these kind of things. One of the big constraints was the supply of the country with the Dar es Salaam harbour port congestion, and the introduction of a bulk procurement system in early 2012, plus the commissioning of a new what we call SPM, single pool marine, late 2012, have really changed the face of the supply of the country. We've got large ship, 120,000 tons ship coming in. This country has, last year's the growth of the country of the GDP was around 7% for the last 4 or 5 years. Inflation now has been controlled, so it's almost a 50 million people country. And, it's peaceful, security wise, so everything, all the ingredients are there for, and you've got these gas discoveries, there's a huge mining potential. Of course we are there to stay and we are there to grow.
There's been much talk of East Africa as one entity. Felix Mosha, chairman of the East Africa Business Council, chatted to us about the importance of this.
The East African Community member states are considered to be one investment area. The role we're playing in that regard is to see to it that we are able to support those who are coming in to invest in any of the East African member states. We're able to provide the requisite services to them. We do organize business-to-business meetings so that they are able to get together and see how they can network and enhance their business interests. We do, of course, work very closely with the East African Community Secretariat in terms of ensuring that the provisions of the treaty are adequately executed. Business conditions in South Africa are very good. Let me put it this way. In the latest US-Africa summit in Washington, D.C., it was determined that the leader in this process is East Africa. But at the time of the integration process, the intra-East African exports were just about 14%. Today, That figure has risen to 26%.
Now, energy, or lack thereof, seems to be a common theme that keeps repeating itself throughout the African continent. So development is good and well, but who will supply the power? Eskom have set up shop in Kampala, Uganda, and Nokwanda Mgeni, MD and CEO of Eskom Uganda, chats to us about energy in East Africa.
The energy sector has been liberalized from the early 2000s. What that means is that the old UEB was broken into 3 sections. That is the generation, the transmission, and the distribution sector. That was then privatized, and that's where we came in as Eskom. Ideally, we should be in a situation where nobody's complaining. There should be no load shedding. But there's a phenomenon we still are trying to understand, where the people who are supplying the electricity are saying there's no demand, and the consumers are saying we load shed it. So that's something we don't understand. Our suspicion is that there are some infrastructure problems that have not yet been identified, or even people recognize that we have a problem, because until then it can be solved.
Power is not the only concern, though, when it comes to foreign investment. What of state security and political stability? KPMG Uganda gives us their take.
The business environment in Uganda is very, very good in that we have had a stable security situation, as indeed you have witnessed today. Before even we started filming, everybody was concerned and they came to see what we are doing, what is going on. We don't take anything for granted. The sectors that are performing very well right now, we can talk about the service sector, and that's the telecom industry. It has been growing. We have over 20 million subscribers in Uganda. The infrastructure challenge has been there, but government has done a lot. They have the all-weather roads, the tarmac roads, have been worked on. You go to the north, you can move from any part from Kampala to the east, to anywhere in the country, and you'll have an all-weather road tarmacked. We are talking about energy. Energy was a challenge 3 years ago, but currently we have got enough energy, but it's not enough in terms of 2 years because the demand is increasing. But government's looking at other projects like Karuma, which is going to generate 600 megawatts. We're talking about Isimba, 110 megawatts, small megawatts. So that infrastructure is being worked on.
So infrastructure seems to be improving, the power grid is being worked on for future investment, and the state is stable. What role do the East African regional markets play in all of this?
We have been able to take advantage of the regional markets through improved cross-border infrastructure, and also the legal frameworks, the regulations, the conditions to license businesses and so on are steadily improving. And one of the duties of the private sector is, I would say, to push government to ensure that we have a good legal framework for investors to establish, to sustain their investments and remain here, because investments are for the future.
Since government are being pressured to get agreements in place, we thought the ideal place to visit would be the Kampala Capital City Authority to get the information straight from government's mouth.
The investment license is very conducive. Our government as a whole is very, very open and very supportive of investments. On our part as the city administration, we're doing everything that we can to make Kampala attractive for investment. We're improving urban mobility, improving the roads, improving the lighting and other infrastructure in the city. We do have a lot of Ugandan homegrown investors already. There are many people that are looking for partnerships. So one of the avenues that investors could come in is through partnerships. The ICT, Uganda has just completed laying our major optic fiber infrastructure. So anyone coming in needing IT services just hooks on to the optic fiber network that has already been put in place by our government. And on telephony, we have many telecommunications companies providing services not just in the region and in Uganda but across the world. So making communication cheaper and better.
But what about taking money out of the region? What are the restrictions regarding profit taking? The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives had some answers for us.
We allow all investors to come in here. The sectors is liberalized. As you know, we don't discriminate on that one. And we, because of allowing investment, we allow also free flow of capital. We had obstacles, obviously, you know. We had a problem of power, but we are doing very well. If you go to the River Nile up there now, we are putting a very big generation plant. Uganda is one of the biggest producers of coffee in this African territory. Of course, we had Brazil, but each time they go down, we come in with very big volumes of coffee. We want now to add value on the coffee we are producing before we even take it out. And that's what we are doing. We have now encouraged many people in this, many citizens here to plant coffee seedlings. And in a few years, Ugandan coffee is what you'll be enjoying everywhere.
Since coffee is such a major export of Uganda, we thought what better place to stop and enjoy a fresh cup of java than a locally owned coffee shop in Kampala. The local coffee shop owner offered her insights.
It is a bit challenging as a woman. First of all, juggling family, children is very challenging. On the other part, doing business, there are no strategic interventions for business people in the market. They are a bit generic, but the market is very raw. There are many opportunities. It's tough, but doable. Yeah, it calls for hard work. Getting coffee accessories, accessories like syrups, to-go cups. They are very expensive. We get them from Europe, from UK. By the time they reach, you find they are very expensive, and our market is still price sensitive. There are many areas which are still raw, manufacturing, tourism, hospitality. And Ugandans are very warm. They will have a soft landing.
The recurring theme here seems to be that East Africa, as a region, is welcoming all forms of investment. Chatting to us about the ideal areas of investment in Uganda at present is Benson Ndungu, country leader of KPMG Uganda.
There are various opportunities that I see in Uganda. One, the mainstay of the Ugandan economy is agriculture. And this is an area where the government itself has been very keen to grow. Various policies have been implemented. There has been very little commercial production or agriculture in Uganda. The land itself in Uganda is very productive. So that's one area that I would say is very available, and also value addition. The government has worked very hard over the last couple of years in introducing policies that are very friendly in the agricultural sector. Infrastructure, another key sector that is available for exploitation. Minerals, many people do not know that we have very many minerals in Uganda. We've got copper, we've got iron ore, we've got coal. The government has completed a very detailed geophysical survey, and all these minerals are there to be exploited. And any investor who is looking at mining, this is a place to come. We've got oil, that is in Uganda, sitting underground. Very soon, we should be able to see production in a couple of years.
Majestic beauty and the African continent seem to be synonymous, so what entrepreneurship is there around tourism? Amos Wekesa's story is one that's known internationally. He started his Great Lakes safari business with just $200 and is now voted as one of the top 2 safari companies in Uganda.
Tourism in Uganda is a fairly new concept. say about 15, 18 years. Uganda was the #1 tourism destination until 1971 in East and Central Africa, until Idi Amin took over power in 1971. This went on in silence for many years. Idi Amin went off, we had so many civil wars, and for the last 18 years Uganda has been extremely very safe, and therefore tourism is starting to peak. Uganda is Africa compressed. Uganda has more inland water bodies compared to any country on the African continent. That is lakes, rivers. We have the longest source, the longest river, just there now. We have a big portion of the world's largest tropical lake, which is the second freshwater lake, Lake Victoria. We've got 10 national parks and 13 game reserves. And a lot of these national parks are extremely green, nice, lots of water bodies within them. If you compared many attractions across the continent with our national parks are so unique in that if you go to a national park, you go to do, for example, a primate walk, a game drive, we do maybe a cruise on the Nile, seeing the different animals on the waters. So just being in one national park, you need 4 or 5 days to be able to do all the different activities just in one national park. We're seeing the government of Uganda taking different strides and appreciating tourism right now. We'll be soon hiring marketing agencies, one in the UK, one in Germany, and the other in the US, which should bring a lot of opportunities for us. We're also going to the continent as well. We're going to South Africa, Nigeria, and Kenya. Those are going to be our focus on the continent, which is very good. And we're also promoting a lot of domestic tourism because not many Ugandans have been traveling within Uganda.
From Nairobi to Kampala, the East African region seems to be presenting itself as an ideal investment opportunity for foreigners and locals who are quite simply spoiled for choice. Yes, there are still infrastructural challenges and regulatory hiccups here and there, but the overall picture that is painted is one of political stability and attractive potential profit-taking. This has been an Invest Africa special.